Hello, everybody. Today I have with me award-winning coach, Shameca Tankerson. Shameca, I am so happy to be talking to you today. Thank you so much for coming here.
Ina, I'm excited to be here. Thank you for having me.
Okay, as you know, I like to really dive into my guests' stories, like from the beginning. All right. And I know that part of it was, like I said, I'm just totally diving in. You having a teen pregnancy. And I'm just diving right into that moment because I usually ask people about, okay, tell me about when you were not an entrepreneur and what was that like? But your story of empowerment and standing in your own 2 feet started very early on. Can you please just walk us through what that was like?
Oh my gosh, it's been so long. My daughter's almost 30 years old. So that's been quite some time. So I will tell you this. I always had been seen as someone who was on a trajectory to be successful. I was a high achiever in school. I got great grades. And so me becoming a teen mom was kind of like out of left field for most people. However, it was generational. And so I just remember this feeling of I failed
Mm.
and that I let people down. And that people who once saw me with promise started to look at me differently and steer me differently. And I remember kind of making a vow to myself that I was going to prove them wrong. And you would think, oh, that's an incredible, amazing thing. But it actually ended up being like the bane of my existence because my life was just this cycle of proving, right?
Mm.
Just trying to always prove that I belonged, always prove that I was better than the average person. And, if you focus too much on other people instead of your own self empowerment, it doesn't really turn out that well. It can become consuming. And it made me neglect some of the successes that I had had early on in my life. So it wasn't a fun thing. My daughter's incredible. And I did end up proving everybody wrong. That's how my story is beginning at this point in time. It's not ending just quite yet. However, the experience of how society looks at you and how they just start to predetermine that your life is now over because of a mistake.
Can you tell everybody who doesn't know what do you do right now and who do you serve?
Yeah. So right now, I am a mentor to mostly women. I have a few men in my community, but mostly women who are very ultra high achievers, but the shame of their past, the setbacks, failures, and disappointments of their past have them playing a much smaller game, kind of hiding in plain sight. I know that journey, right? I know the journey of being a phenom, being a giant, and kind of shrinking and not standing in your greatness. And so the work that I do, I usually tell people that I'm in an all out war against the wealth gap and against women, especially not trusting and knowing and owning the value that they bring to the table. And sales just happens to be my weapon of choice.
What would you say to someone who's listening right now who may be down on their luck right now and they're looking at you as a source of inspiration and as a vision for their own life? What would you tell them?
The words that are always in my heart and soul are just never give up. And it doesn't have to be a pushing, striving. It's just a trust and a knowing. When you know that you know that I could look at my life and go, it wasn't supposed to be that way. And in hindsight, I go, it was exactly how it was supposed to be. When I was in it, I was just trusting in the knowing that there was always something greater that is coming on the other side. And so I would say never, ever, ever give up on your dreams, no matter how outlandish they seem, how impossible they seem, because everything's impossible until somebody does it. And just keep that courage and that faith. It takes courage to continue to get back up again when it looks like all hell is breaking loose around you, and to also be gracious with yourself, learning how to not beat myself up. And when going through potential setbacks and disappointments has become an art form for me, allowing emotion to process through me when I need it and not judging it. All of those things are just really, really important. And no one can give that to you but you.
Do you remember a time when maybe you were going through your college experience, or maybe when you were just starting out, right around that time frame when things got really hard and you may have considered quitting or doing something else? Or I would love for anybody out there who's listening who can see you as that beacon of vision and strength to hear about a time that things didn't feel like they were clicking and working out.
Yeah. So I am a very tenacious person. So quitting is not in my vocabulary. But I will tell you that I thought I was on this great path at one point in time. I was about 27 years old. I just earned my first six figures. While I wasn't a complete business owner, I was a 1099 employee and I did have a company associated with it. And so here I was on the cusp of multiple six figures. Things were going great. I'm thinking, all right, I'm proving them wrong. And in 2008, in the United States, we had a big like real estate bust. And I was actually in real estate at the time. I was in real estate loans in the financial end of it. And we ended up losing everything. So at this time, I had gone from being a teen mom to being a six figure, just about multiple six figure earner. And so I thought, okay, here we are. This is it. I'm about 27 years old. I'm managing, some real estate mortgage companies and just doing really, really well for myself. I have employees in my own small little company. It was just really great. And I just remember we had a almost 4,000 square foot home. People would be like, you live in a mansion. I'm like, it's just a house. And so we drove nice cars. My husband drove a Beamer. I drove a Mercedes. It was all like everything was gravy, right? It was beautiful. I had kids in private school. I was doing the thing.
Yeah.
And we only lasted a little while because I didn't have quite as much savings because I thought the money was just going to keep coming. So I had future plans. And so when the real estate bust happened, eventually we ended up having to let employees go. We lost the cars, we lost the house, we lost everything. I always tell people right now I'm playing my country song backwards. We lost everything. And it wasn't just like we lost everything and people have the stories like once you've earned a certain amount of money, you could just go get it back. We had children. And so over time, depleting all the savings that we had, the only thing that we could do is go get public assistance. And so here I am, a person who was living in a house that people used to call a mansion and a multiple six-figure earner and a vow to never be on public assistance in my life again once I had gone off of it as a teenager back in the welfare office. And the shame of that was huge and tremendous. And in the office, people would say things like, this is made for people like you. And I'm like, no, people like me aren't supposed to be here. And so I just remember sitting there, one, sticking out like a sore thumb because I didn't look like I belonged there, but we definitely did because we needed to feed our babies. And feeling a huge, immense amount of shame. And I think what took me so long to get back to or get to where we are, where I am today, is the releasing of that shame.
Yeah.
Sitting there in the welfare office, I remember almost giving up. I remember nights in the bathroom crying into a pillow so my kids couldn't hear just the pain of what I was going through. And I remember as I was sitting in the office feeling like everybody, I just felt like everyone was looking at me. No one was probably paying attention to me, but it felt like all eyes were on me. And I can I don't know, it was like this visceral feeling in my body of this can't be happening to me. So I'm sitting there, I'm waiting on my name to be called, and I hear like an almost audible voice because I'm at the point of like, okay, it's over. Hopelessness in my heart and my spirit, like, wow, this is what it's come to. And I hear this voice say, get up, fight. It's not over. This is not how this story ends. And so when I look back on that moment, and I have looked back on it in the past, I realize there was something I did in that moment that I didn't realize at the time. And it was that I had to give myself permission that it was okay for me to be successful, even though I'd had a huge setback. Because remember, I'm a consultant and a mentor to business owners.
Yeah.
And so, in order for me to mentor people, what if they find out that you had a business and you lost it? Or what if they find out that, you're right now, while you're trying to build your business, you're getting a check from public assistance?
Can
And
I
so,
actually, can we actually like zoom into this right?
yes.
Because I'm gonna tell you something that I have been talking about on social media over the past like month, but it's taken me this long to really talk about it openly. And I want to zoom into that feeling of shame, right? I've been talking about the fact that I'm a six-figure entrepreneur. I made my first six figures in the first couple of years of my business, and I'm here showing myself as a successful business owner who can help others bring their marketing up to snuff. And due to over investing and under earning, I found myself, I was investing in like 4 or 5 different programs at one time, thinking, I just have to invest and the money will come. I just have to invest and the money will come. And I got myself into a deeper, deeper, deeper debt hole.
Mhm.
And it wasn't until I finally decided, okay, I just need to tell people about it. I just need to talk about this because I'm not alone in this,
Yeah.
right? I'm not alone in wanting to grow my business and at the same time falling into debt because I keep getting the shiny object syndrome. I keep thinking, no, that program has the ticket. That program has the ticket. It's like I'm buying lottery tickets wherever I can. And I'm like,
Mhm.
I know that I'm not alone in this.
Mhm.
But going out there with an identity of a successful business owner and having to tell everybody, hey, all the money that I'm telling you I made, I lost it just as quickly. And that it took a long time for me to get over that shame to say, this is a common story that people need to hear and we need to be part of the solution. Back then, 2008, 2009, social media wasn't what it is right now, right? So, Facebook was just starting, Twitter was just starting. I
Mhm.
would I would love to zoom into what was that like for you to deal with clients, right, who were trusting you, right, because you had created this persona, you had created this identity as successful. I want to know what it was like to come out to them, to come out to family and friends, the ones that were saying, you live in a mansion, you have it made, and you're here dishing out advice, right? What was it like to contract publicly?
Yeah. I don't think I ever, in the moment where I allowed shame to run the show, I was pretending.
Mhm.
I struggled. My business struggled because on the outside, I was looking the part because I didn't want anyone to really know, like, okay, the real estate market busted, but I'm still doing something. I'm doing a thing.
Mhm.
And because I didn't want anyone to really know, on the outside, it looked like, oh, everything's going well. But on the inside, I was like, don't pay me. I'm not worthy. I don't really want a client. And I would do things. My behavior would be in alignment with that belief system and that structure. People would show up that wanted to pay me, and I would take forever to call them back because I had shame. And so for a long time, I struggled. And I love that you said that you came out, because it wasn't until I started telling this story that I'm sharing with you publicly. And people would go, oh my gosh, you're so courageous. But I had to put a name to it. Shame can only live in secrecy.
Mhm.
It can only live in secrecy. And so when you put a name to it, when you speak it publicly, it loses its power over your life. And what began to happen is I began to get healed, and people began to show up, and my life began to turn around. My business began to turn around. And so I would tell my story over and over and over and over again. It's a huge part of the work that I do today. The work I do today is because of the story that I'm sharing with you right now.
Yeah.
My business model is based on those permissions that I gave myself that day inside of the welfare office sitting there. And it's why my work is so powerful.
And I would love for you to share. There were 3 permission slips that you gave yourself. I would love for you to share that understanding for everybody who's listening to us right now. The context is when you're really down, when there's shame, when you feel like you can't go on YouTube and tell your story because the shame is too great. These are the 3 permission slips that may be your way to get out of those feelings. What were those 3 permission slips, Shameca?
So I want to say this, when I was in it, I didn't realize it. I went back and I looked over the moment and I realized these are the things that I had to do in order to pull out of this shame, this feeling of shame. And the first one was permission to trust my value, permission to trust that everything that I've always been, when I was a little girl, when I thought I was meant to impact people, all of that was still true. And that there was no failure, no setback, no disappointment or circumstance that could happen in my life that could devalue who I was created to be by divine design and the impact that I was meant to have on other people. Nothing could devalue that. And so I always use this example of, if you think about this, let me grab something. We'll use this. So we'll use this piece of paper that I have, and I'm just going to fold it up a little bit. So let's just pretend that this is $100 bill. Okay. So if I have $100 bill in my hand, how much is it worth?
$100.
Okay. And if I crumble it and ball it up, how much is it worth?
Still 100.
If I throw it on the ground and I stomp on it and I drag it all around the street, the house, how much is it worth?
Still 100.
And if I rip it a little bit and it's a little torn and battered and doesn't quite look like a brand new crisp $100 bill anymore, how much is it worth?
Still 100. And by the way, I'm getting teary-eyed because I feel like you're doing voodoo on my body. Like you're like throwing me around because like that, those internal feelings are there for all of us.
It's such a beautiful lesson because we can give it to an inanimate object, right? But it's hard for us to give ourselves the sanctity or the dignity of that same experience, that your value does not change because you invested in too many programs and didn't have the money that you were making just sitting in a bank account, right? It doesn't change because I became a teen mom. And as a matter of fact, I would submit to you, if you think about it, over time, the older money gets, the longer it's in circulation, it actually has more value over time because we keep printing money, but this older money is more valuable. And what I realize is I was not just valuable or despite the things that I went through, but I was actually even more valuable to my clients and the people that I meant to impact now because of the things that I've been through.
I love this so much. I should just like get myself $100 bill, crumple it up, and just have it posted on my wall as a reminder of this. I welcome everybody to do that. That'd be an amazing exercise. And just print out a picture of a $100 bill. It doesn't have to be a real one. So let me go back to your story, Shameca, because when you were in the welfare office and you decided these are the things that I'm going to believe, you just went through one of the permission slips. I'm sorry. Let's keep going with those. What are the other two?
So the second one is permission to own my expert status. So there's a person, I always take a page out of this person's book. And so if I were to ask you, I do this everywhere I go, by the way. I ask Uber drivers. I ask all kinds of people when I travel to other countries. When I'm in Paris, I'm like, who is the greatest boxer of all time?
Muhammad Ali.
Exactly. No hesitation, no question, let me think about it. Then I follow up with a secondary question because it's amazing to me. It's like a phenomenon to me that everyone, I don't care how old they are, from the oldest to the youngest, 5-year-old to 100 years old, always answer Muhammad Ali. Who said he was the greatest?
He did.
He did. There was no other person who crowned him the greatest. He did. In fact, he said, I said I was the greatest before I ever was, before I ever knew I was. I was just saying I was the greatest. Mm-hmm. And so my page out of his book was, you are the one who determines your expert status, your level of expertise, your authority in the world. No one can really do that for you. No waiting on an invitation to play on the big kids' playground, to get invited to sit at the big kids table or the rooms or the stages that you want to be on. It starts within you. And so I had to give myself permission to claim myself the authority that I already knew myself to be, instead of sitting around waiting on someone else to say, oh, I see you and you are an authority. And so now you can rise to the occasion and help people. Right?
Yeah.
So I love his story, and I always just invite people to do that, to take a page out of his book. You are the only you there will ever be. And while there may be other people who do the type of work that you do in the world or who have a similar storyline as you, no one has your fingerprints. No one has your tone of your voice. It's all you. No one has your lived experiences. And that is what makes you powerfully impactful to those to whom you are an answer to prayer, and they are your divine assignment.
Sorry, and I just want to compliment and on my end, it also took a quick realization to see that I can still teach. I have a ton of value to give that has nothing to do with how well or poorly I managed my debt. I managed my shiny
Yes,
object syndrome. There is so much that I have to give, that I can teach, and that I can help people get results with,
absolutely.
that has nothing to do with that. So standing in my expertise was one of the big things that helped me survive this. So
Yeah.
what was permission number 3?
So the last one was probably the toughest because remember, I was hiding in plain sight. I was like, I have a business, I want clients, don't pay me, right? That was that this thing going on. And so it was stop hiding and sell more. Stop hiding and loudly proclaim that your doors are open and that you can help and support people. So many people do the actions of doing business, but secretly are pushing clients away, or do the actions of being seen as a business owner, website, business cards, all of those things, but quite frankly, never invite people to work with them.
Yeah.
And so for me, it was stop hiding in plain sight and sell more often to more people, just loudly and proudly over and over and over again, letting people know my doors are open, I can support you. My doors are open, I can support you. My doors are open, I can support you. And it changed everything.
Yeah. And I just want to say this totally out loud. You're so right in that I've been guilty of this, of putting myself out there so much, right? And I have a podcast and I have all the great social media account and I have all these things. And I would talk to my husband. I'm like, I haven't made any money this month. And he's like, why? I'm like, I know exactly why, because I haven't sold anything. Somehow we think that, oh, as long as I do all the right things, the money's going to come. You guys, that's going to be true as long as you're actually inviting people to work with you relentlessly, consistently, all the time. People have to be able to understand what you do so that they want it, so that they can accept your invitation. Because it's few or far between the opportunities where people are knocking on your door and saying, I want to work with you. It does happen, but we don't rely on that. We rely on invitation and acceptance, invitation and acceptance. So thank you for saying that out loud so everybody can hear it, even for people in the back. Those are so powerful, those lessons.
I think in 2011, I met Adam Urbanski, who is another guest on your podcast. And Adam is a huge part of my story.
Would you like to tell us that
Oh,
story?
gosh. He's a huge part of my story. He's been my coach and mentor since then. And he still is today. So we do a lot of crying together because he's been on this journey with me this entire time. And, we haven't talked about it, but, I'm now running a multi-million-dollar business. And gosh, you got me all messed up today. So this past year was doing an event. We did a virtual event that I usually do live. It's called Game on Live, but because of COVID, we had to do it virtually. So I'm on the phone with Adam and I'm going through all of my content for the event and, just getting his feedback. And I'm telling him all the stories I'm going to tell. And I'm starting to laugh. Well, he's laughing because he's like, oh my gosh, you have just become an incredible gift to the world and marketer. And, it's all been under his tutelage. So he's like, I don't really have anything to tell you. I'm like, oh, well, I learned it from you. But then we're telling these stories. And I realized that every story is actually about him. It's actually a pivotal moment in my life that happened. And it was like at his event or at a mastermind. And so we're having this laugh because I'm like, oh my gosh, you're woven into the tapestry of who I am today. All of these key moments of becoming in my life, you have contributed to. That was because what I learned from him that year. It was that year that I got introduced to online marketing and the man who would become my mentor, who is Adam Urbanski.
Can I ask you, if somebody's listening to this, what would you say is your biggest piece of advice on choosing a mentor?
So, what I've learned is most people choose mentorship and programs based on popularity or tactics. And what you're looking for is someone who can support you in the way that you need to be supported. There's no sense in joining a program that's all video if you need to talk to someone and bounce ideas off people in order for you to get it, right? There is no point in joining a program that doesn't have a way for you to talk to people again if you're a person who needs to talk. I'm a verbal processor, so I'm not going to join a course. It's not going to happen. And so you look for, how do I need to be supported and how do I thrive? You know, most people think, oh, one-on-one is like the way to go. It is for some people. But for me, I thrive in community. So I'm also looking for community that I can feel safe and at home in, and community that there are people who are all various levels, but there are definitely people who cause me to rise to the occasion and that are at a much higher level, because that has been something that has catapulted me forward, being able to see what other people are doing and go, oh wait, if they can do that, I can do it too. Borrowing their belief, someone who uplifts and doesn't tear down. There are too many people, because they want to feel powerful or special or important, they spend their time cutting everyone down. I can point out all the ways that you do everything wrong, but if we could focus more on what we do well and amplify that, I think results go exponentially. So you got to get clear on, how am I best supported? Not what's the latest, greatest program that's out there or tactic that people are using and who's the mentor everyone else is going to. Who's the best mentor for you based on how you communicate, based on your current needs as a human being and as a person, what would best support you so that you're not in a container that makes you feel like a fish out of water, which will cause you to contract instead of expand. Those are the things that I think are most important, more than a lot of, other things people look for. Is it great to have someone who's done what you're trying to do? Absolutely. But what I know and even learned from myself and, even people like you, where we've had situations happen in our life, it doesn't change the genius that is us, right? So I don't believe that it's more important to have someone who's been where you're trying to go rather than someone who can help you to get there.
Yeah. And I love that because I mean, take it from somebody who has invested in a million different kinds of courses and experiences. There isn't one that is the magical solution, because everything is going to work differently for everyone. So figure that out, what kind of support you need, and get that. And it doesn't matter if that person has 500 followers on Instagram or 500,000. In your case, you've created $1 million business, multi-million-dollar business. I'm going to out you and say you have just over 1,000 followers on Instagram. So the numbers are just completely irrelevant
Totally
to,
irrelevant.
to the kind of value that people are bringing out there. So it's finding what you need. So let me ask you before we wrap up, in your rebranding, and you, I could see you becoming this kick-ass empowered woman. Like, you could see it in your branding so clearly. Like, I went to your website and immediately felt it like slapped me in the face with the power of it. And one of the things that you're very well known for is about the power of sales. It's about how you teach sales. I saw a post on Instagram where you said that one of your clients just described the way that you describe sales, the way that you teach sales, as a religious experience almost. And I thought that was very, very sweet. So is there something in particular that you believe that new starting entrepreneurs who are really, right now they may be scared of sales, right? And kind of hiding behind all the marketing. What would you say to them is a big key to unlocking their sales potential?
I think the biggest thing is understanding what sales actually is, what a sales situation is. If we're in a conversation and I'm about to invite you into working with me, this is actually a pivotal moment for that person. It's a point of decision. Like I talked about Adam with tears in my eyes. None of that would have happened if he hadn't sold me something.
Right.
those were moments of decision for me to say, yes, I do want that bigger vision that I have for myself. And so for me, it is letting go of all of my insecurities and my thoughts about, well, what if the person's going to think I'm pushy and all of those things, and understanding that it is almost spiritual in nature. This is my moment to make an invitation to someone that can be the bridge to exactly where they're trying to go. And I take that very seriously. So I always tell my clients that, one, let go of your own baggage, right? It can't be about you. It's got to be about them. So the second thing is this: it is your responsibility in that moment, if you know that you have something that can support someone to getting there, to offer that to them. If you knew you had the cure to cancer, would you hold it back?
Right.
Like, how rude would that be to know that you had an answer to cancer and let someone leave a conversation with you because you didn't want to push it on them? Right? I don't want to be pushy, but you have the cure. If you knew you had the cure to cancer, you do everything in your power to make sure that that person at least knew it was available, and whatever they decide to do, it's up to them. Same situation with sales. So it's your responsibility to offer and share and make that invitation, and it is their right to choose.
Yeah. I love that. It's, treat people like adults, but they gotta be able to describe in their own words what it is that you do. They gotta know that
Yeah.
that is an option for them, and
Yeah.
you're the only one who can provide it. So let me ask you, if everybody who's listening right now had to do what you're about to tell them to do, and they have to do it in the next 24 hours, they don't have a choice, what would that thing be?
Whatever the most scariest thing that you can think of right now for you, go do that. Because I believe that success doesn't take time, it takes courage. And the more courageous you are, the more you work that courage muscle. I believe that every dollar that we make is a time that we say yes to courage. It's a reflection of the time that we say yes to courage. Not asking for the sale, it's because you're not acting in courage. Not wanting to sell is because you're not acting in courage. Not wanting to get on live video, all of those things have to do with courage. And so if you can think of the scariest thing, whatever you just thought of, whatever that was, not the second thing, but the first thing, go do it, and go do it sooner rather than later, and keep following courage over and over and over again. Do the next courageous thing and the next courageous thing and the next courageous thing. And then when you wake up, your life will be completely different.
I love that. It's almost like what they say, that your success is measured in the number of difficult conversations that you're willing to have. It's
Absolutely.
always doing the hard, right thing. So, Shameca Tankerson, this has been an incredible treat for me. I'm so grateful that you decided to do this. So, where can people follow you and find you online?
So I hang out, because I'm old, mostly on Facebook. So Facebook is my world. It's where I am. You can find me on Instagram as well, but Facebook is where I have my hands in everything. So follow me over there. Shameca Tankerson is I'm across all platforms on social media as Shameca Tankerson. You can also go to shamecatankerson.com. We are in the middle of a rebrand. So in the next 60 days ish, you're going to see another powerful explosion of this new version of who I've become as of late. I'm excited about that as well. But shamecatankerson.com, you'll always be able to find me there. Find me there. I have lots of free content that you can engage in. I have some goodies that you can access as well. And I would love to have you come hang out with me and my community.
Thank you so much, Shameca. It was a real treat.
Thank you. This was a fun conversation.